Welcome to Association Chat, an online discussion where we warm ourselves by the virtual fire, welcoming thought leaders and trailblazers alike to join up in this online home for the community. I'm your host of Association Chat, KiKi L'Italien, and I am thrilled to introduce our guest for today's episode, communication expert Sam Horn. Sam is the CEO of Intrigue Agency, a positioning messaging consultancy that helps people design and deliver TEDx talks, keynotes, funding pitches, and one-of-a-kind brands. She's also the CEO of Tung Fu Training Institute, a trademarked communication skills approach that teaches how to give and receive respect at work, at home, online, and in public. She's the author of 10 books from major publishers, including Tung Fu, Pop, Take the Bully by the Horns, Someday is Not a Day in the Week, which was, by the way, an Association Chat book club pick last year, I believe, or the year before, and Washington Post bestseller, Got Your Attention. And her newest book, Talking on Eggshells, received a glowing Publishers Weekly review and endorsements from the likes of Marie Forleo, Jack Canfield, and Whole Foods founder John Mackey, who calls it the course correct for today's cancel culture. Not bad. All right. So sit back, relax, get ready to stop avoiding those tough conversations with Talking on Eggshells author Sam Horn. Welcome, Sam.
Thank you so much, KiKi. I'm really looking forward to sharing some stories and insights with your viewers.
I'm thrilled you're here. I think that, one of the things, whether you think you're a good communicator or not, we all kind of struggle or are a little bit hesitant to go into these tough conversations. And lately there have been so many for so many reasons. And I think about people talking about families not talking to each other. I know you mentioned this in the book, but I received this book in the mail. And folks, I know if you're listening to this, you can't see it, but if you're looking at this online, I want you to see all the notes that I took, just full of this, because it's such an excellent resource. So the first thing I wanted to ask you before I get too carried away and waxing poetic about Talking on Eggshells is, you've written so many books. What was the impetus? What was the thing that made you say, this is the book I need to write now?
I was doing a Tung Fu workshop, and someone in the workshop raised his hand and said, I work for a very demanding boss. And it seems like we just tiptoe around this individual. We never know what's going to set him off. He's very demanding. And it's just like we're walking on eggshells all day long. And I said, oh, you're not walking on eggshells. You're talking on eggshells. And I bet we all have someone like that in our life. It could be a customer, it could be a committee member, it could be one of the vendors we deal with. And it seems like we can never say anything right. We're always saying something wrong. This is the book for them.
Well, I think this is the book for me, because I personally I've been looking, I think, for this book maybe my whole life. One of the first things that you talk about in the book is avoidance. Why we're talking on eggshells, and this whole idea of why it can be a challenge or maybe not a good idea to avoid these difficult conversations. Because I have to say, I'm an avoider. I tend to try to put these things off as long as I can. Why is that a bad idea?
Well, and by the way, unless people are driving, I hope they take notes. Have 3 columns, because you and I are going to talk about these talking on eggshell situations. Why do we avoid? What to do if people are complaining? What to do if people are blaming, etc. And the middle column is words to lose, what not to say and do. And then the right-hand column is what to say and do in that situation, so that we can actually respond in a way that helps instead of react in a way that hurts. Sound good?
Oh, it sounds great.
Okay. So the very first is what you just said is put conflict as our very first situation. Okay. And the fact is 78% of people identify as conflict averse in the middle. They actually avoid. In particular, we have a habitual conflict style. And if we grew up in a dysfunctional family, I grew up in a Cold War. My dad was emotionally distant. My mom was emotionally wounded. They were really good people. They taught us to do the right thing. They just didn't talk to each other because they had years of hurt feelings and they didn't know what to say, so they didn't say anything. So as a result, many of us avoid or we accommodate. We give in to get along. We people please. We just don't want to rock the boat, or we get angry. And avoiding, accommodating, or getting angry doesn't help. Over on the right, put assert. And can I share a 60-second story that tells us how to turn a conflict into a clarifying conversation?
I would love that.
Good. There's a young woman named Bethany. She's in her 20s and she has learning disabilities. And she was able to get a job at Salvation Army. And she really applied herself. And she was thrilled when her supervisor said, "You're up for promotion." Well, the very next day, her supervisor told her that she was in danger of getting fired. Now, put in the middle. Before, Bethany would have retreated and withdrawn. She would have avoided. She would have maybe quit because she felt so bad about this reversal. She could have gone home, dissolved into tears, maybe fallen into a depression. Instead, she used 6 words that her therapist gave her. And you know what the 6 words are?
What were they?
Can you please help me understand? Can you please help me understand how I'm up for promotion yesterday and being threatened to get fired today? And her manager said that, well, a customer had complained about how rude she was. Bethany remembered the customer. The customer tried to bring back a used mattress with the cover off. They can't do that. She tried to very politely explain the policy. He left in a huff. Now the manager knew what had happened. She was able to compliment Bethany for enforcing their policy, even though it was a hard conversation. And Bethany got the promotion. Look at the difference. Avoid the situation. It gets worse. It doesn't go away. Please help me understand. We can often find out what's really going on and make it better instead of worse.
I mean, I think this is a great story and a great example because this avoiding doesn't always help. And sometimes it actually, I think, adds to that anxiety that you're feeling, just feeling like there's this sort of impending doom. There's this thing that's just hanging out there that hasn't been reckoned with. And I know I can build a narrative in my mind about all of the things that this person is doing. And there was something that I read in your book that it does not look very kindly on me, but it has to do with this contempt, this idea of contempt. Who do I feel contempt for? And you describe contempt and how it can mean deserving scorn. Can we talk a little bit about that? Because I can't be the only one that's doing this out there.
Yeah, we sure can. And by the way, one more thought about turning, avoiding, accommodating, and getting angry into asserting. Did you ever watch the TV show Friends by any chance?
Yes.
One time Phoebe, remember Blonde, was complaining to Joey about something her brother had done. She's going on and on and on. And Joey says, "Well, have you told your brother how you feel?" She says, "Yes." "Well, not out loud."
That's me. I'm Phoebe. Yes.
So now let's go down to the situation over here is frustrated. We're getting we're getting frustrated. Someone's blaming us for something that's not our fault. Someone's taking out their anger on us. In the middle, put impatience. Over on the right, put empathy. In the middle, put contempt. Over on the right, put compassion. And now here's the story that I bet everyone who's in an association has experienced their own version of this. So the story and then how we can apply it in our work as association leaders, association members, etc. is that my 84-year-old Aunt Kay volunteers at a hospital. She even did this during COVID. And I asked what it was like. And she said, stressful. I said, well, put me in the scene of a stressful situation. And she said, I will always remember, she said, a woman ran through the double doors holding up her phone saying, my daughter was in an accident. She's in the ER. She's injured. I've got to get in to see her. Well, KiKi, you may remember the policy was 1 visitor per patient per day or no visitors. And Kay called the ER and she asked about the daughter. Someone was already with the daughter. She had to tell the mom she could not get in to see her daughter. And the woman lost it. You've got to be kidding me. My daughter's hurt. She needs me. Now, Kay could have stayed there with impatience. However, she asked herself 4 words. You know what they were?
What were they?
How would I feel?
Mm.
How would I feel if my daughter were in an accident and in the ER and I couldn't get in to see her? Those 4 words turned her contempt into compassion. And they gave her the incentive to turn "there's nothing I can do" into "let's see if there's something I can do." She called the ER back. She said, "Who is with the daughter?" It was the Uber driver who had brought the young woman in. Kay
Oh.
was able to explain the situation, thank him, he left, and the daughter was able to be with the mother, all because instead of, "It's not my fault. Why are you blaming me? I can't do anything about it. How would I feel?" The incentive to turn impatience into empathy. "There's nothing I can do," into "let me see if there's something I can do."
Oh, I love that story. And it also, the Uber driver is probably just trying to be there, be a comfort while they were waiting for someone to be there. And it's just amazing how when you have a little curiosity and empathy that it can end up helping so much. One of the things that you talk about in here is how to prepare, how to plan for those discussions that are complicated, are tense, and they're going to be tense. There's no avoiding it, but you have to prepare. You have to steel yourself. Usually for me, the type of conversations that those are those where I know that my emotions are probably going to run high, and so will the other person's. And so talk to me a little bit about how you can plan for that, because I know that it's so hard for us to really try to think logically and plan the best way we can without getting too far into our heads and sort of going down that wrong path of imagining what somebody else is going to be thinking.
So I'm so glad you brought this up. So how about we make this our 3rd situation? And
Okay.
we know we're walking into a difficult situation, right? We know they're not going to be receptive. They're going to be resistant, and they're going to be cynical, skeptical, or whatever. And in the middle, put "fail to plan." And in the right, put, fail to plan. And if you've heard the saying, if we fail to plan, we plan to fail, right?
Right.
And over on the right, we're going to put a W5 form. I'm going to be very specific. Hopefully you're taking notes. Is it just write down right now, www, 5 W's vertically.
Okay.
And I'll give you a quick example of how if we take 5 minutes before we walk into a challenging situation, we dramatically increase the likelihood of it going well instead of worse, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So here's the W's. What is the situation? And what, in one sentence, what is the action I want them to take? What is the change I want them to make? So what action do I want them to take? What change do I? Who is the decision maker, or who am I talking with? What is their mood? Are they thinking, "We tried that before, that's not going to work"? Are they thinking, "You got to be kidding, that's not in our budget"? Are they got to be thinking, "This again"? What are they saying? Because we're going to anticipate and voice their objections to make them moot. Now, 3rd one, where and when will this happen? Now, come on. As associations, sometimes we're on phone calls and it's 9 o'clock on the East Coast, at 6 o'clock on the West Coast, right? Or an international call. And so we need to take that into account. Quick story. I'm dealing with Cisco, and this is 435 people in their learning channel, their top executives. And on a Wednesday, one of their department heads gets in touch, and he's got an all hands meeting on a Friday, wants me to help him prepare. I said, "When is it going to be on Friday?" He said, 4 o'clock on Friday afternoon. I said, "Ted, they're going to have 1 foot halfway out the door." I said, "Do you know what the first words are out of your mouth? You're going to hold up, don't even have a phone, hold up a watch and say, 'I can only imagine you're thinking,' not 'I know you're thinking,' which is presumptuous.
Mm-hmm.
I can only imagine you're thinking it's 4 o'clock on a Friday afternoon. These things usually take 2 hours. We're going to bring this in under 45 minutes. I promise you'll be out of here before 5. Rock and roll, let's go." Look at who won buy-in because he planned ahead, he anticipated the resistance in the room, and he neutralized it by getting ahead of it, right?
Oh, yeah.
So what, who, when, and where. Next is, why will it be an ROI for them? All right. What are their priorities? What are their interests? What are their needs? Why will this save them money? Why will this save them time? Why will this give them a competitive edge? Why will this help them retain members? Why will this give them an addition for CEUs so that their members decide to re-up, etc.? So what are 3 reasons that they will say, yeah, this actually sounds like a good idea? And then the last W, why will it be an ROI for us? Because we never walk into a hard conversation with only one outcome. Because if that doesn't work, we're locked in. We've got nowhere to go. So what are 3 acceptable options? So if we can read the writing on the wall and they are not moving, we can pivot to something else so that we can walk out with something that's acceptable to both of us, instead of we didn't get that one thing and the whole thing's a failure.
Oh, I love it. This is so good. So I've got my W5 form. I've got all of my 5 W's. I feel like I should ask about those nonverbals. And I made a note that in your chapter where you mentioned interpersonal situational awareness, you mentioned this point about surfacing the subtext. So surfacing the subtext, that's like noticing the clenched jaw, the thing that no one's talking about on the surface, but that is there underneath. Can you talk to me a little bit about why it's so important to do that, and how to sort of work with that subtext that's there? Because I feel like that happens a lot.
I'm so glad you brought this up. So let's make this situation clueless. What can we do if we're clueless, right? And I'm going to tell a story on myself. So in the middle, put ignore the room, right? Because we're not paying attention to body language, you know.
Okay.
And over on the right, we're going to read the room and we're going to lead the room. And I'll share an example early in my career where I ignored the room. And so right out of college, I was lucky. I got a job with Rod Laver, the tennis champion at his tennis resort on Palmetto Dunes, Hilton Head Island. Well, now I was appointed to represent the club at the island board meeting. So here are some very senior executives and me, the 20-year-old. Okay, KiKi, it's a little embarrassing. I was young, I was eager, I was full of ideas. Oh, we can do this and we can do this and we can do that. And after 3 meetings, thank heaven, Dale Schutte, who was the general manager of the Palmetto Dunes Hyatt, pulled me aside and said, Sam, I think you should sit on your hands for the next couple of meetings. Now, I had never heard that phrase before. Sitting on your hands means to put a sock in it. He said, everyone in the room is senior to you, and you have done more talking than them. From now on, ask yourself, is it timely? Is it welcome? Is it additive? And if it's not, zip it. And so, see, in associations, we have a lot of meetings, right? A lot of live meetings, a lot of Zoom meetings. And what we're talking about is reading the room. Wait a minute. Have I talked 3 times and the senior people in the room haven't talked? Time to put a sock in it. Wait a minute. Am I pitching a program that I think the association will love? And I can see the decision maker over here has a clenched jaw or scowl or crossed arms. Maybe stop talking and say, well, Bob, what do you think? And engage him instead of just continue to talk when the answer is going to be no. So I really think if we read the room, we can do what Desmond Tutu said. He said, we got to stop pulling people out of the river. We got to go upstream and find out where they're falling in. Let's think upstream, because if we look where the meeting or conversation is going and it's going to be a no, let's pivot instead of just keep talking when they've already made up their mind.
Well, that actually is a great segue into a question that I had about this is all about, not avoiding and dealing with these hard conversations, but is there ever a time when you really should avoid the conversation? Is there ever a time when it's not the right time, or it might not ever be the right time to have that discussion? And how do you know when that is?
Well, first, great question. And so let's put down on the left here then is how can we read the room?
Okay.
Is that Richard Branson said, time is the new money. And KiKi, I think that time is the new trust. And it's not just reading the room, it's being aware of time. And so there was a story in the book is that a woman had maternity leave and she ended up with complications. So she didn't just take 3 months, she took 6 months off. When she came back, she found out within a week of returning that her salary was considerably less than her colleagues who had commensurate responsibilities. We had lunch that day. She was so upset. She said, I'm going to go back to the office. I'm going to march in. I'm going to demand to get paid what I worth. And I just asked one question. Is it good timing? See, the question isn't whether you deserve the raise. The question is, would they be in a mood to say yes? No, they would be in a mood to say, I think you're more trouble than you're worth. You've been gone 6 months. We tried to cover for you, and now you're coming in with a demand. So do you see, sometimes it's not about the quality of our proposal or the validity of our request or recommendation. It comes down to, is it good timing? And by the way, if you walk in and you start talking and you can see that someone is preoccupied or distracted, time to say, I can see that you're right in the middle of something. One more question and then I'm out of your hair. Or I can see that you've got some other things going on. Would you like to reschedule this for later today? Because if we address time, we ease their anxiety. And this is such an important point, is that one of the quickest ways to turn a no into a yes is to take less time than they anticipate. Say, I know we had an hour scheduled for this meeting. I know it's late for you. We've all had a hard day. Let's all agree to keep this under 20 minutes. It's like, I know you've got a presentation in 5 minutes. One question, 2 minutes, and then, we can both get ready for that. If you bring up time, you remove their anxiety. Anxiety is defined in 2 words: not knowing. If we don't know how long they're going to take, we see them as an imposition and an intrusion, because we're thinking, don't you see I've got stuff to do? Why are you interrupting me? Address time, take less time than they think. They'll always take your call and they'll always ask on you in a meeting because they know you're going to keep it short.
Wow. That is so good. And by the way, I just want to call out this. If no one else took this note, I had to write this. Anxiety is defined in 2 words: not knowing. Oh, that's so good. So the taking less time, I have to say, most of the time people are begging to go like a little bit over. Can you imagine offering that choice, to make that choice and to have such control of the time that you're wrapping things up beforehand and giving them back some time? That's amazing. I wish that would happen in more conversations.
Let's be an advocate for this, KiKi, and everyone
Yeah.
who's listening in today, is that, remember, Richard Branson said time is the new money. And no, we're clear, time is the new trust, which is why if we say we're going to start a Zoom call at 9 a.m., we don't start at 9:05, and we do not offend people who got there on time or say, well, I can see we're still waiting for a few people, so we'll wait for them. What? We're penalizing the people who are on time. We're honoring the people who are late. We send out an email in advance and we say, we know how busy you are. We really appreciate you carving time out of your life to be on this Zoom call. We say we're going to start at 9 o'clock. Use the word trust. You can trust us to start at 9 o'clock. These things normally go an hour. We know how busy you are. We are going to distill this into a half an hour. Here's the agenda. Each person can talk for a maximum of 2 minutes at a time. So we're productive, we're purposeful. Guess what? People are going to show up at the next meeting because it's productive, purposeful, and we keep our time promises.
I love it. I want to do this. I want to actually sign a time promise pledge that we're all going to keep our time promises and see what kind of positive impact that's going to have. I just think that just that alone would be so amazing for people to do. Okay, so I'm geeking out about that a little bit. I'm going to try to calm myself down so I can get back on the topic of difficult conversations. And it's not hard for me to do that because I'm actually thinking about some of those conversations where I'm walking into them and I know, and this happens in boardrooms, it happens around the dining room table when you're meeting with family. But when you know that you are going to be having a conversation where there are viewpoints, there are topics, there are areas where you're just completely opposed. You're just completely opposed to the other person's point of view. Now, I know we talked about empathy, but do you have any advice for us when we already know it's very unlikely that our mind is not going to be changed on a particular topic going into it, and we know that their mind is probably not going to be changed as we're going into that conversation?
I'm so glad you brought this up. So let's put it this situation. We're at an impasse.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes. The impasse situation. Yes.
That's right. So once again, I think you know how I roll. 60-second example to show how this shows up in real life. And then we'll unpack what not to do and what to do in that situation. Okay. I was very good friends with a woman who was really an icon in the speaking industry. We had monthly phone calls for almost 20 years. And a few years ago, I was shocked when in the middle of our phone conversation, she said kind of casually that she felt that current president was the best president we ever had. Well, that's the opposite of what I thought. And she continued on with her beliefs. And at the end of that phone call, I didn't know if we'd ever talk again, because I just didn't know how someone I cared for, who was in integrity, respected so much, could think what she did. And I was very fortunate because I remembered I grew up on horses in Southern California, and there was quicksand out in those riverbeds. And now, did our parents say, okay, you can't ride horses anymore? Did we give up riding? No, we avoided the dry riverbeds that had the quicksand because it'll suck you in and you can't get out. And we decided that we were going to focus on what we had in common instead of what we had in conflict. And that we were not going to throw away a 20-year friendship over this, because she was not going to change my mind and I was not going to change her mind. And so we labeled that a quicksand conversation. And I'm really reaching out to people because, as you said, family members aren't talking to each other. People at work have diametrically opposed views. And I was so impressed with Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who was asked on CBS Sunday Morning, you go out to the opera with Judge Scalia and you're like on opposite sides of the political spectrum. How can you do that? She said 6 words: we are different. We are one. Instead of differences being wrong and us just ruining, throwing away relationships, can we focus on what we have in common instead of what we have in conflict? And can we remember that we are one, and different is not necessarily wrong. It's just different.
Oh my gosh. You have the best quotes ever. I don't know where you keep all of them, but it is absolutely amazing. Chills. We are different. We are one. And I see Cecilia is, by the way, if you're listening to this later, you are able to comment and ask questions. Cecilia Sepp, who is a wonderful colleague and also has a wonderful podcast, says, but it's not about changing minds. It's about talking and understanding that we believe different things. Yes. This all or nothing attitude is ruining the world. Yes, absolutely. And actually, on that topic, absolutely, you warn us about absolutes, don't you? In the book, you say, that this is where this is language to avoid, because when we say everyone says this, everybody believes this, you always do this, you always leave the eggs out, you always and that's something that is actually a topic that has happened in our household. I'll tell a little story about my own household, and I'm hoping my husband wouldn't mind. We will oftentimes, have the typical couple, quarrel that, it's more like bickering. But the thing that that tends to drive me up a wall is this use of absolutes. You always do this. I'm like, do I always do this? Is that really true? Like, really always? Why is it so dangerous to use these absolutes?
So first, let's put in the left-hand column under our talking on eggshell situations, emotional, right? If someone is emotional, in the middle, chances are we're using extreme words. So let's talk, because extreme words produce extreme emotions. So let's talk about what to do instead. Is that if someone says, you never listen to me, I do too listen to you. Look, we're arguing with them about whether we listen to them, right?
Yes.
So over on the right, when someone makes an accusation, you never listen to me, you don't love me anymore, it's like you don't care about your members, those are accusations. And they often get an emotional reaction because they're sweeping, they're not true, right? And so over on the right, say these 4 words. What do you mean? You never listen to me. Well, what do you mean? Well, you have your head in your phone. You're not even looking at me. The real issue. We can address that instead of reacting to the attack. How about you don't care about your members? We do too care about our members. Now we're arguing with our members about whether we care about our members.
Yes.
Instead, what do you mean? Well, your prices have gone up in the last 3 years, and your member benefits haven't gone up commensurately. It's like, oh, let's talk about maybe some new membership benefits that we've just added. Do you see how when we say, what do you mean? What makes you say that? Why do you think that? It actually often reveals what's behind the accusation or the attack. And we can address that instead of just denying it, making it worse.
Right, right. It's almost like doubling down on whatever that accusation is when that isn't even necessarily the whole point or why somebody's even saying that thing. So, one of the things that I know people really struggle with, and I hear this from friends and colleagues, it's when they're in a situation where someone really has messed up. And they care about that person. They practice empathy, but they know that to be in a leadership position, they have to say something. What do you do in that sort of a situation?
Okay, so let's make this something's gone wrong, right? And is that someone's made a mistake, someone's dropped the ball, and can I share 2 stories, KiKi, a hero story and a Judy Gray story? Okay.
Oh, I love Judy. So absolutely. And yes, we'll allow the hero story, but yes, let's get to the Judy Gray story for sure.
Okay, so hero story and then Judy Gray, who
Yes.
was head of the Fairfax County Chamber of Commerce, and then she was head of FSAE, Florida Society of Association Execs, and then Veterinary Association. So she's been in the association world for years. She is probably one of the best leaders I have ever had the privilege of seeing in action. So we'll learn from her wisdom in just a second. We're talking about what to do when something goes wrong. First, I'm visiting my son, Andrew, in New York, and his 1-year-old son, Hero, crawls across the floor, hauls himself up on this guitar stand, and starts pounding the strings on the guitar. Now, in the middle, something's going wrong. As Elvis said, when things go wrong, don't go with them. Well, see, when things go wrong, we often react. He could have yanked the guitar away. He could have said no. He could have said, leave that alone. Stop pounding on. He could have done all that, would have made it worse. KiKi, do you know what he did?
What did he do?
He said one word: gentle. I saw Hero's face transform, and he reached back to the guitar and went strum, strum, strum. Some bells up on the window, ring, ring, ring. And Hero made music in that moment because Andrew chose to shape his behavior instead of shame his behavior.
That's such a good example. Okay, I love Hero's story. Now, what about the Judy Gray story?
Okay. And now, by the way, if you're taking notes, under shame and shape.
Okay.
Under shame, put the word should, because if we tell people what they should have done, serves no good purpose. No, tell them what to do next time, right? Instead of telling them what to stop doing, which reinforces the dreaded behavior, no, what do we want them to start doing? Now we're a coach instead of a critic. People learn from mistakes instead of lose face over mistakes. And we show them how to do it better instead of making them feel bad, right? So powerful words. Okay, now Judy Gray. Okay, now if these are people in association, so you prepared for conferences and conventions before, and you know all about swag bags. So there was a big volunteer committee, and they'd even hired some temps to come in and pack hundreds of swag bags. Well, Judy walked in, and this is the day before the convention. They're at the convention center stuffing the swag bags, and she walks in, and there's some boxes over there in the corner. And she goes over and she opens them up, and they are brochures from two of their sponsors. Somehow those sponsor brochures did not get in the swag bags. It meant they were going to have to start from scratch and go back and repack all those bags. Well, the blaming began. Well, you were the one in charge of don't look at me. Right? Okay. So Judy was the pattern interrupt. Do you play sports, KiKi, by any chance?
Not really.
Anyone who plays sports, what do referees do when there's a fracas, when people are getting into it, right?
Yeah.
They do a physical pattern interrupt. They go time out. And so Judy went time out because it stops people from blaming and shaming and finger pointing. And then she said, let's not do this. Over on the right, put the words, let's not do this. We could argue for the rest of the afternoon about who dropped the ball on this, and it's not going to get those swag bag stuff. Instead, let's everyone pitch in, take care of this, and get it done as quickly as possible. When things go wrong, John F. Kennedy said, our task is not to fix the blame for the past. It's to fix the course for the future. Be the pattern interrupt. Stop it. Wait a minute. Stop. Enough. Instead, say, this won't help. Let's not do this. And move everyone's focus to how to handle this now or keep it from happening in the future. Fix the course for the future instead of the blame for the past.
Well, okay. So on this topic, less fun to talk about. It's easier to talk about when someone else has made the mistake. What about when we've made the mistake?
I'm so glad you said that. Okay, let's put complaint as our next situation. Okay. Something has gone wrong and we're the one getting blamed for it, right? Or we're the one who dropped the ball or something. I'm going to say something that flies in the face of what we think. Do you know what goes in the middle column?
What?
Explain.
Oh.
When people complain, do not explain why that didn't happen. We think if we explain why that didn't happen, people will understand and they will forgive us. No, explanations come across as excuses. They make people angrier because they feel we're not being accountable.
I've noticed that. I've been guilty of that.
Right? So, and now this works at home. This works in associations. It works when people complain. Don't explain. Over on the right, take the A train. A for agree. And here are two of the best words, relationship-saving words. You ready? You're right. Because most of the time people complain, we ask ourselves, is what they're saying basically true? Yeah, it's true. That someone says, you were supposed to call me back yesterday. Oh, I know, I had an emergency. I had to, no. You're right. I was supposed to call you back yesterday. A for apologize. And I'm sorry, I didn't get back as promised. A for act. And I've got that information you requested. You want to talk about it now? You prefer me send it to you in an attachment and an email. Look, the A train expedites complaints. Explanations aggravate complaints. So if the ball is dropped, and by the way, KiKi, I remember a man saying, why should I apologize if I didn't do anything wrong? And I said, have you heard the phrase, we can be right or we can be happy? See, apologizing doesn't mean we're at fault. It simply means we're commiserating with their inconvenience. And when we say, I can only imagine how frustrating that was, or now they feel seen and heard and understood, and they're a lot less likely to kill the messenger.
Yeah, I have to say, I mean, a quick story of my own. I used to, when I was in college, I had a short time when I worked as a checkout girl at the grocery store. And I would occasionally end up hearing from people who were less than happy. And one of the first days that I had this job, it was not the most fun job. It was fun to talk to people, not as much fun to try to keep my item count up. But one of the first days, I learned a lesson that was so important. And the manager came up to me and said, "You're going to hear from people who are trying to talk about, they're trying to return rotten lettuce that they say they bought yesterday. They're trying to do all kinds of things. They're going to be very angry sometimes." And he said, "The best thing you can do is just listen." He was like, "Listen to them, just nod, listen to what they have to say." He said, 9 times out of 10, that's all they really want anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And he was right. What I found is when I listen to people who have issues, most of the time they just want to be heard. And that's what I'm hearing you say too, is really, it's not so much about being right. It's about really listening and helping people to feel heard and understood.
Boy, so KiKi, you know how this rolls. Let's put a situation down over here.
Yes.
Let's say that someone is sad or unhappy, right? And in the middle, let's put advice.
Okay. I'm putting advice right in the middle.
Because often, if someone is sad or unhappy, we try to console them, we try to comfort them, we give them advice on how to make it better. And we think we're helping and we're making it worse.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll give you a quick example of what to do instead. Is that my son Andrew, I've got two sons. Tom could go for a month without combing his hair. He didn't care. Andrew was there in front of the mirror every day, the fawns, hey, looking good, right? When Andrew had to get glasses, it was a very traumatic experience for him. We're driving home, and he says, "I look like a nerd in my glasses." Guess what I said? "You look fine in your glasses." They actually look fine. He said, "Oh, the kids at school are going to laugh at me." What did I say? They're not going to laugh at you. And you see, we got home and he stormed out of into the house. So it's like when people are unhappy, it's like, "Oh, this happens to the best of us. Oh, things will look better tomorrow. You're strong. I know you'll get through it." We think we're helping when we're consoling or comforting or giving advice. And KiKi, like you just said, they want our ears, not our advice. And instead of trying to console them or comfort them, if we paraphrase what they just said. "So you're afraid the kids at school are going to laugh at you?" "Yeah." "So you don't like how you look in your new glasses?" "Yeah." Do you see, when we paraphrase it back, the other person will almost give this guttural, "Yeah." KiKi, we know about the Great Resignation. We know that people are leaving jobs because they don't feel seen or heard or understood. If they say, people don't appreciate me around here." "Sure we do." You feel people don't appreciate you around here?" "Yeah, I've been putting in 60-hour weeks and no one's even noticed." It's like, I should just quit. What the heck anyway? It's like, so sometimes you feel like quitting. Yeah. When they give that guttural, yeah, they feel heard. They feel seen and understood. That's when we connect.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good. So, I have to touch on this because I was so thankful that you wrote about it in the book. It has to do with gossip and snarkiness and a little truth telling. When I was going through school, I used to watch comedians, and I would listen to some of the people at school who it seemed really snarky, and they always had something kind of negative to say. And I thought, oh, they sound smart, right? And as I got older, I began to get less and less pleased with being around people like that, because I just didn't want to be unhappy, and I thought the negativity was very difficult. That gossip, though, and the snarkiness, it pervades, and I find that it's in professional settings, it's in civic organizations. It's just kind of, we all have those people around us. Maybe it's us, but we all have those people around us who want to tell us the negative thing about our neighbor or our friend or whatever. What's your recommendation on how to handle when you're in a situation where other people are the gossip? And what would you say is your advice about, snarkiness and gossip?
Okay, so our next situation is snark and gossip. And
Okay.
I love what you said right in the middle is snark is not smart.
Yeah.
Is that Colette said, the better we feel about ourselves, the fewer times we have to knock someone down in order to feel tall.
Mm.
And snark is a way of taking people down a notch so that we can feel tall, so that we can feel better than them. And, it's why John Mackey usually does not give endorsements to books. And it's why he agreed to endorse this, because he, like you and me and many of us, is concerned about cancel culture.
Mm-hmm.
And snark is canceling, and it's modeled for us around. It's modeled on social media. It's modeled on sports shows, etc. It's like, I can't believe Brady dropped that pass, and everyone piles on. And so I think several things over on the right. Number one, we're going to make a rule and a commitment right now. We're going to make a rule in our organization. We do not gossip and we do not snark. I had a colleague who started an organization called Dreams for Kids in Washington, D.C. He deals with a lot of volunteers and a lot of millennials. He had an employee manual for his volunteers. And rule one was no snark, no gossip. If you have an issue with someone, you talk to them face to face. You do not talk to them behind their back. Because if you gossip, at some level, people are thinking, if you're saying this about them, you'll be saying something like that about me. So have a rule in your organization. Discuss it in your employee and volunteer orientations. So you have a commitment that you will not do it. And if we're ever tempted to do it ourselves, we ask ourselves, could I do better? Right? We're tearing down, some sports athlete because they missed a three shot, no, could I make that shot?
Mm-hmm.
I have no business snarking on that person. Good for them for being in the arena, right?
Right.
Good for them, look at all the times they got it right instead of the one time. So we pattern interrupt on the snark when we're about to do it. It's like, wait a minute. If I were in that situation, could I do any better? And then, as you said, if there was a story in the book about a woman who stopped going to the lunchroom because it was as they say in Hawaii, everyone talks stink about everyone else. And then she thought, wait a minute, I'm not having lunch because they're talking stink. What's wrong with that? So she started going back in. And when they would say, oh, do you know what I heard? Snark alert, right?
Mm-hmm.
You change the conversation. You Don Draper it. Don Draper said, if you don't like what's being said, change the conversation. When someone says, do you know what I heard? Our CEO was let go because of snark, gossip. Just change the conversation. Or you can say these three words. Ready?
Okay.
Include me out.
Include me out?
And that's from Samuel Goldwyn, the Hollywood producer. Include me out. It's like, no, thank you. Let's talk about, and then we move the subject to something else instead of going down the rabbit hole of not knowing what to say and feeling uncomfortable and not really wanting going along, and we don't want to offend anyone. Be the example. Albert Schweitzer said, in influencing others, example is not the main thing.
It's amazing. I do think that when I have been the most disappointed in myself after a conversation, usually difficult conversation, it's been when I've lost my temper or, maybe I've come back with that zinger. I never really feel good about the zinger later. I might in the immediate, but I never do later. And I say that like I say it all the time. I'm a nice person. I don't really have this happen very often, but when it has, I don't regret when I choose kindness or when I choose to take a higher road. I always regret the zinger. I always regret the anger, letting that out, because there are times I think where we might naturally be angry, but this idea of figuring out how to be the better person, the better version of ourselves, and to show that part, to lead with example through our behavior is such, it's so encouraging to hear about it. It's so encouraging to know that there is advice about how to do that when our emotions we might be at risk of letting our emotions get the best of us. And it's nice to think that, you know, we really can change. And that's one thing that, you know, another thing that you talked about in here was habit change. How do you change your habits? You know, somebody who has always said, but yes, this is true, but, you know, and will go in a different direction rather than adding to and having that language that allows people to agree. Can we talk a little bit about
Yeah.
that?
Okay, let's add two situations to the left. Let's talk about
Okay.
habit change. Okay, so we'll
Okay.
talk about that. And then, KiKi, how about we address the poignancy of what you brought up? Because it's the very last chapter in the book. It's like, what can we do if we're wondering if it's worth being kind? What
Yes.
can we do if everyone around us is, very negative or very critical or how can we continue to be kind when other people aren't? Okay.
Mhm.
So, first, habit change is that what we're talking about is a skill. It's like, we're taught math and science and history, and we're taught soccer and we're taught piano. So, in the middle, it's a skill. And most of the time, we're taught a skill, right? Guess what? When it comes to social skills, communication skills, people skills, we're never taught what to do when people blame us for something that's not our fault, or when someone accuses us of something that's not true. So, what I've created, and if you would like, people can reach out afterwards to sam@samhorn.com. We will send them a one-page reminder card that they can actually post on their refrigerator. They can post by their laptop. Because what happens is if you keep these skills in sight, in mind, as you said, we're about to say, well, I know you want to do that, but, it's like, well, you did a good job on that, but. It's like, well, I'd like
Mhm.
to help you, but. Nope. Oh, and I'd like to help you, and let's take care of this first, and then we'll talk about that next. You did a good job on that, and could you? So if we keep these words to lose and words to use in sight, in mind, it keeps them top of mind. It helps us catch and correct, and it really does help us communicate in a way that leads to cooperation instead of conflict. So we can learn this skill at any age if we keep these in sight, in mind. Sound
Oh,
good?
I think it sounds great. And I'm definitely going to be the first person that's writing to sam@samhorn.com so I can get that card, that reminder.
Good. And now, shall we talk about how we can continue to be kind even when other people aren't?
I would love to talk about that. Yes.
Okay. So, in the middle, please put other people control our quality of life.
Okay.
Because often some people say, that person makes me so mad. That person is such a jerk. They're ruining my job. They're ruining my life or whatever. And at the end of almost every Talking on Eggshell workshop, Tongue Fu, I put up a slide from Eleanor Roosevelt. And she said that no one can make us feel inferior without our consent. And I've changed that to say no one can make us mad without our consent.
Mm.
And I'll always remember this construction boss stood up very gruff. He said, Sam, you're pulling a Pollyanna with this one. He said, you have no idea of the people I work with. Do you mean if someone swears at me, that's not supposed to make me mad? And a woman stood up in the group and she said, I'm a surgical nurse. I agree with that because I've lived through it. She said, I work with a neurosurgeon who is the most abrasive individual I have ever met. He's a brilliant physician. He has zip people skills. She said, I was a fraction of a second late handing him an instrument in surgery. He berated me in front of my peers. He
Mm.
humiliated me in front of the team. She said, it took all my professionalism just to continue with the operation and not walk out. I'm driving home. I'm thinking, I'm rehashing what he said. I'm getting more and more mad. I get home. I sit down at the dinner table. I said, oh, that doctor makes me mad. Well, my husband had heard this before. He said, what time is it? 7 o'clock. What time did this happen? 9 o'clock this morning. Is it the doctor who's making you mad? And with that, he got up and he left the dinner table.
Wow.
She said, I sat there and I thought about it, and I realized it wasn't the doctor who was making me mad. The doctor wasn't even in the room.
Mm-hmm.
She said, I was the one who'd given him a ride home in my car. I was the one who had set him a place at my dinner table. She said, I decided that evening that never again was that man welcome in my home or in my head, and that when I came home, I was never again going to allow him to poison my personal life. So see, in the middle, put other people make us mad. Other people ruin our life. And over on the right, no, we get to choose what we think about. We may not choose what happens to us. We choose how long we dwell on it. We choose whether we're rehashing it at dinner. We choose whether we give that person a ride home in our car. If we get crystal clear on this, then we understand that regardless of what happens, we get to control the quality of our life by controlling what we think about and what we dwell on and what we give our attention to.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. If I had mastery over quotes, there is a quote that's out there that has something to do with never let anyone take residence in your mind without paying rent or something. I would even argue, like, even with paying rent, not worth it. But like, I really love that idea about being able to choose and taking that ownership over what we do have control over, which is what we think about. And so that's just amazing. Sam, thank you so much for talking with us today. When people reach out, they can reach you at sam@samhorn.com. Yes.
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 Mm-hmm.
And get that reminder, which I want the reminder. I definitely do. Any final words for us as we go forward and try to be brave when we're approaching those difficult conversations?
You know, Mother Teresa said the world is full of good people. If you can't find one, be one. And I really hope that all of these responses and words in the right-hand column, they really do help us be a good person, even when other people aren't. And what I found is if we treat people with respect and with proactive grace, most of the time they're motivated to respond in kind.
I love it. Thank you so much for being our guest today, Sam.
You're welcome. It's a joy. Hope people found it inspiring and useful.
Absolutely. Wow. What did you think? I am such a fangirl for Sam Horn. It is absolutely true. I love her books. I love her knowledge. I love the fact that she has like the best kept secrets. And now they're not secrets anymore. Now we can all have them in Talking on Eggshells, how to handle those hard conversations that we've been dreading and procrastinating and putting off. We don't have to do that anymore. Now we have the answers. So that's all for the show today. If you need to go back, if you need to take notes, I have a whole, I should have had a bigger notebook for this particular episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. And I hope you'll take this and be able to apply it to your life and work as you move forward. You know, as Joseph Campbell once said, the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. And I hope you have a great rest of the week, everyone. That was a good one.